Well, welcome folks to InfernoCon. If you're just joining us, we have all day long of programming for InfernoCon. The holiday special returns. And as you can see, I think there's a bottom little ticker going on. We're also fundraising for the Make-A-Wish Endowment Fund. This whole programming is fundraised for that. So there's a little QR code that you can point your phone at, or if you're watching on your phone, then instead you can go to wish.org/501st-fan and make a donation if you are enjoying the programming so far. So this panel, it will be essentially introduction, if you're not familiar with the various droid builders. It's titled, Watch Out for These Pesky Jawas. They're always looking for scrap, which I found an especially ironic warning, considering that I am a Jawa, I'm surrounded by all these droid builders. So very, very tempting resources I'm seeing in all of these background images here. So I want to thank all you guys for joining. I thought we'd start out with doing some introductions. So myself, Nikki, DZ8397 from Garrison Excelsior. I'm more of, I would say, a droid mom or a droid transporter. I usually leave the actual puppeteering to my son. He's 18. He's masterful at it because no one is expecting him to be doing it. So I'm usually in my Jawa as sort of the distracting front man, and no one realizes that R2 is not anything other than a totally autonomous robot. So let's see. So I'll go, I guess, in order in my screen. So David, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm David Castellano, TI 9327 from Garrison, Korea. I'm a droid builder out of Pennsylvania. I have an R2D2, R5J2. My daughter's built R8B7 from the Clone Wars, and I have 2 mouse droids and I've built various static 3D printed droids. I've been doing this for better part of 8 years now. I love sitting there like you do, like your son does, and I just hide in the crowd and puppet R2 and just let him go, and watch everybody's reaction, trying to look around and see who's doing it. So it's lots of fun.
All right, then Darren.
My name is Darren Blum. I'm a Nightshade on the boards, and I've got R2D2, a chopper, a mouse droid, and then some other droids as parts right now, so a BB-8 and a DO that need more time and attention. Well, I started with a build. I ended up kind of adopting and reworking 2 of the droids, so just kind of have spent more time with the electronics and programming. So I developed the shadow system for the droids to take and get a much smaller controller that we could use instead of the full RC system that a lot were using when I started with R2. So.
All right, Mr. Baddeley.
Yeah, so Michael Baddeley. I guess I 3D design or design droids for 3D printing. I've got ridiculous amount of droids at the moment, much to my family's dislike, and originally decided to move things into the shed, and now the shed's overflowing, so it's back into the house again. So I've got R2, we've got Chopper, I'm just having a look around, we've got BB-8, DO, I've got an ALT droid, I've got an R5, I've got BD-1, and then I've got God knows how many small ones. You've been doing designing for about 7 or 8 years, and I guess from my perspective, it's a community of droid builders that I just find absolutely fantastic. There's a bunch of very, very nice, very lovely people with lots and lots of new friends. I love the cons. I love when we just get together as droid builders. The whole kind of spirit of it and community of it really, really is what I enjoy most, to be honest. And of course, 3D printing.
John.
Hi, folks. I'm John Haag. I am TI 12130 of Garrison Tyrannus, and as soon as I submit updated photos, I will also be a Jawa with Rebel Legion, because yeah, you gotta have a Jawa to run around with your droids. I've been 501st since 2016, and came back from Celebration Orlando. At the end of Celebration Orlando, several of us locally came back and said, we want to build droids. And that's when I stumbled across Michael early in his process with his old version 2 droid. Printed out that. The rest is history. I have way too many droids now, not anywhere near as many as Michael. I've also benefited from the hard work of Darren. I love using the shadow system. It's great to just kind of, I've had a similar situation where I'm standing just right next to somebody. They're like, who's controlling that droid? And I'm just like having to interact with them. And they have no idea. So I've got a BT1 / C2B5 next to me. He's missing his legs at the moment. I've got a Dio, actually 2 Dios. This belongs to somebody else. Cheap, who is Proto Chopper downstairs, and a bunch of other little guys too. So love having them run around. And yeah, my son is not quite old enough to drive them himself, but he definitely has taken possession of them, and like, he runs guard duty.
And Doug.
My name is Doug Bickert. I go by Warp Cell on the builder boards, and I got into building about 10 years ago. I just started reading. Spent 3 years reading, a lot of time reading, and then jumped into it with a dome, and this is my R2 unit behind me, and a bunch of other things that I build. I'm a parts supplier on the board for drive systems and things like that, and I absolutely love it. The highlight of all this to me is the philanthropic nature of the whole group, and getting out there and going to hospitals when we used to, and we'll do that again. You know, getting out and going to schools and doing STEM presentations, and it kind of introduced me to a part of myself that I didn't really know was there with all the philanthropy stuff, and it's really fun. And there's nothing better, as all these builders will agree, than seeing a child who's in the hospital forget for a few moments that they're there for a reason, and to see the droids, it just melts away. And so that's why I like droid building so much.
Kids plus the hospital staff, just for everyone to forget why they're there for a moment, has been like the absolute joy. The few times I've been able to do it.
Yeah, I remember one hospital visit that I brought R2 to, and the 501st was trooping it as well. And I just kind of left him out in the hallway when I went into the conference room to help the troopers get suited up. And just like the noises I heard through the door, like, what is that? Is that R2? R2's in the hospital? Can I have a picture with him? But he was just, you know, there by himself, but I could still use the remote through the door to make different noises and stuff. They're like, what's going on? It was so much fun. So to get us started, I thought we could sort of give a high level about what the Droid Builders Club is about. So people who are not familiar could learn a little bit more about the community and how to get involved and that kind of thing. Anybody up for giving us a brief rundown on R2 Builders? I mean, I know they formed in 1999 by Dave Everett. And it's mostly, obviously, an online community, like most of these international clubs are. You guys want to let us know, like, how you feel the community, you know, works to help build future droid builders?
It is definitely an online community. We luck out, and a lot of us kind of either through inspiring others to build, spring up local communities as well. Like I take partial blame for the explosion of 3D printer purchases locally. I've taken full blame for that one. Although I definitely also shift the blame to Michael on that one.
Oh, I'll take some of that.
But as a relative late comer to the community, it's definitely it's a little less formal than the 501st or Rebel Legion, but it's even more of a celebration of just making, like just people sharing their innovations. Like you got Doug and Darren and Mike, like it just like these three guys who are like Titan. I'm going to call you guys Titans within the community, but like y'all's contributions, even just as like part makers and programmers and designers and stuff. But I love the celebration of sharing knowledge, the collective growth that we have as a community, as people innovate and say, hey, I figured out a better way to do this, and here's an alternate way to do this, and just like the open sourcing of software, and even when we have to sell parts, just like the fact that people are taking the effort to do runs and sell parts, and like, hey, you may not be able to manufacture this stuff, I'm going to do the runs. Here's a new feature of R2 that you can now do because I built these parts. I'll say that.
I think, I mean, that's what John said about the community and people building on other ideas. I think for me has been incredible. You know, everybody releases something, somebody grabs it. What they do is they add extra bits on beyond sometimes what we think is possible. And you know, so this is where some of these incredible builds come from. And then in the background, there is so many options based on electronics that's been developed, drive systems that have been developed. But the beauty of it all is it's all open source. It's all kind of shared. I mean, my joining about 7 years ago on the 3D printing piece, the bit that really surprised me was the amount of messages I got around accessibility. Because I know if you're in the US or in Europe, you can jump on part runs, but I was getting messages from Brazil and all areas of the globe kind of saying, guys, I can now build a droid. I've not got to wait for 6 months for a part run or try and get something shipped across six borders. And again, I think you know, it's that piece of innovation, people bringing new ideas and sharing those ideas that touch a lot more people than what we've done with previously. The other thing I will say in the last 2 years, with what's gone on in the world and shifting to kind of the online community, the connections across borders and across regions has grown massively. I've got loads, as I'm sure everybody on this panel's got lots and lots of very, very close friends I haven't met, but actually I've spent a lot of time with. We've shared things, we've kind of built relationships over that period. And I don't think, you know, you can underestimate that. It's been a really interesting last 12 months or 2 years in that space.
And I mean, to that point, like especially in COVID times, like literally after this panel, we're having a end of year celebration, which coincided with a fundraiser for a member of the community that we just lost, and like raising money specifically for the foundation that supports researching his disease. And it's just like that selflessness and like just contributing, and like we've done how many fundraisers just over the past 2 years just within the group for just tied to the group?
About 5 or 6. I think we've raised about £12,000, something like that so far, which is whatever that is in that strange money that you have over there.
Yeah, and I'll say, I'll reiterate statements too. Like when I started, you know, I started with, in the Star Wars community with 501st. So we had our small community of local garrison, but once I hit the droid builders, that opened up mounds of possibilities. The camaraderie, it skyrocketed so much. It was so much of a different experience for me because everybody was just so open, welcoming, going into celebration, and even just talking to fellow builders in the builders room at celebration. It was people I'd never met before. I just know from forum names, oh, hey, you know, you're so-and-so, great, nice to meet you. Strike up conversations for like 10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours for the entire week, over the course of the entire weekend. It makes this hobby a lot much more thrilling and exciting.
I think to that point, I think part of that comes from we're never done with our droids. Like costumes you finish, and I love getting dressed up, but droids, we're either never done or we're literally working on like multiple droids at the same time. Like it sucks you in even more than costuming does. And mind you, I've got like 3 costume projects going on right now as well. But just the shared, it's a little bit more of a shared experience across a broader swath of people sometimes.
I think the common theme is what restricts us is lack of space. I hate to think if we all had warehouses, because what would happen is we'd just keep producing these things, you know. It's and the speed at which people create these things, but as John said, they're never finished. You know, you're constantly going back and adding bits or tweaking bits, and then somebody will bring out something else where you go, well, that's really shiny, I want that on my drawing.
Well, Michael, I'm
But
still
yeah.
waiting for the one-to-one sandcrawler. Actually, yeah,
The what?
yeah,
Full
the
size?
one-to-one sandcrawler. That's what I'm thinking is next in your repertoire.
If
The
enough of us
sandcrawler I've
printed
just done is
parts,
quite big.
just drive
I always thought that time was another limiting factor, though. I mean, space is certainly one, but for those that have built an army of droids, where do you find the time to do it? Because that's something that I've seen, or here at cons, people are saying, you know, well, they'd love to get into building a droid, but you know, they don't have time. And I always say it's about prioritizing, but
it's bit by bit. Like you find some time here or there. And mind you, like I've got this guy behind me. I've disassembled him, and I've got plenty of time to do his electronics. I'll probably do his electronics 3 days before the next con, even though I would have had 6 months. But yeah, it is a prioritization. And I know my first droid I built little by little. It's small steps, small bits of progress is the key. Space is also important, though. Space is so important.
And buying more 3D printers. The more 3D printers you get, the faster you can produce things. So from my perspective, anyway.
That's all.
If you want to do it, and if you want to do it really slow, just do them in metal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That'll slow you down.
No, but Doug, like you were saying earlier, I mean, you said you spent the first 3 years basically just, you know, reading and researching. So I think it helps perhaps to have a deadline, like John was saying. You know, I'll get that done right before the next con. But you know, it's also definitely a benefit to do your research before you go down a path that might not get you where you actually wanted to be. But that was one of the other things I thought, maybe if everyone can pick one of their builds and perhaps kind of go through the process between, you know, the idea of I want to build, you know, X, you know, how long did it take you to, you know, research it, source the parts for it, put it together before you could actually bring it out to a convention or an event or whatever. Like it's
I got a short story, so I'll jump in and get that out of the way. I have one droid, other than a gonk droid that I built for fun out of Tupperware. The R2 is my only droid, and to the point made earlier, you get to the point where, oh, I'm finished. No, I'm not. so R2, I specifically, he was the mission, and I just wasn't going to stop until I got him perfect. So guess what? He's not done. And there's a lot more going on. He's all metal. The reason I took 3 years to read so much is because I knew by the first couple of posts I read that this was going to cost a decent amount of money to do. And so I wanted to make sure that before I even got a part that I knew what the end game was and what media I was going to make him out of. So the dome was the first thing that I got, which was the number one recommendation to get started on. And then after I got started on that, I made a whole bunch of mistakes and learned how to correct them in metal, which was tricky. And then chose Darren's operating system, which is wonderful. The shadow system is fantastic, Darren. It's just I'm so happy to meet you on this Zoom, Darren, because I got to commend you on that.
yeah. So that's what the controller looks like there. That John.
He's the controller. Yeah, he's the control guy, and I use half of Darren's system and another operating system just for animations because of the amount I've got going on inside mine. But Darren was the base, and then as I'm built, once I got him finished, what I thought was finished, I run across Michael Baddeley, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's like creating all this wizardry. So how can I do those ideas in metal? So I started messing with that, and then realized, oh, I need to get a 3D printer, and so that I can print my prototypes, because what a brilliant idea. And so the amount of time I spent researching was really to try to knock the cost down, so that I wasn't like doing duplicate work a lot. And that's the most important part about researching droids before you get started, is to figure out, okay, what's the steps, pull down your outline, and then talk to the community, because it is so wonderful. The community, they will help. I mean, there's maybe one to three snarky people in the community. The rest of them are wonderful, and there are thousands of us. So they are. It's just that's where you get it going, really. But choose your media. That's the first thing. Choose your part and then map your course as you're going. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
definitely
the
sounded
two builds that stand out, well, apart from the R2, the beauty of R2 is that the amount of reference material that's in the club is incredible. So from a wanting to design something that in a new medium in 3D printing, R2 was relatively easy because reference was there. It was then working out how to use a new technology for the strength and things like that. But the two that stand out for me was Dio. At that time, I remember in Celebration, Dio rolled across the stage, and my social media kind of exploded with people going, when you're going to make Dio? And I looked at this thing and go, Christ, you know, it's a single balancing wheel. How do you actually get this thing to sort of function and work? And like many people then, you're kind of looking at it literally frame by frame to see if you can work out how it's steering, how it's working. Then you're comparing it to R2D2's foot or a point of reference, which you've got on a size and scale of that, and building up, because there was no other reference at all for Dio other than those frames from Celebration. And I've got to say, I probably know each individual frame on a personal level going through that side by side, which is quite interesting. And again, I was driving to get Dio out for the Rise of Skywalker for the premiere. Which was version 1, which kind of was a bit of a wobbly beast, but it worked.
He was.
It was, yeah. I just said that to see the pain on John's face. And then version 2, which was a whole bunch of kind of auto balancing technology and coding and things like that we just made up as we went along. But I was quite pleased with Dio. The other one was Chopper. I undertook Chopper, a conversation with Michael McMasters, and I think a lot of guys on here will know. And at that time, there was some Chopper stuff kicking around. I said, I'll do it if we can do the ultimate Chopper, as in the one that is pixel perfect, really, to Rebels. And so that took me about 12 months, I think 14 months, again, literally. Kind of watching frame by frame, getting as much reference material as possible, working out, because Chopper's CG, of course, you've got bits that squeeze in that can't squeeze in normally, so you've got to do some kind of little bits around there, and then all of the nuances around the head wobbles and building in all of the things. When you start designing a droid like R2 or Chopper, the size of it is massive and you think I can fit everything in it. And then the further you go along, and I'm sure Douglas has found this, the more you start to push in there, you suddenly realize that there isn't any space for all the things that you want to kind of get into it. But yeah, Chopper and Dio were probably the two most rewarding ones for me that I've enjoyed designing and building.
It was fun seeing the progression with Dio, that's for sure. Having built both of them and just seeing like the worlds of difference.
Yeah. We just need it on Shadow now, don't we, John?
I've given up on that. I've given up on that. The RC works so well.
Yeah.
I'll say, like, so part of the fun with the droids is, and especially like embracing the like, so we have like hospital visits, conventions, charity stuff. Like a lot of it's very tied with the 501st and Rebel Legion stuff. But the cool thing is, even if your droid's not finished, you can bring it out to public. You're not going to bring out a half-finished costume. You might bring out a costume that's 98% there, that only like the judges are not going to realize is slightly off because you're testing it. But like, I have definitely, when I started with the original version of him, I brought the dome to a maker fair, and I was printing some pieces of it and had some kids there. And then at the convention 6 months later, when he was like 95% done, and same kids and family come up and are like, I saw you working on him before. Is that the same? Like just showing them the progression of that. It did take me about 6 months. I probably should have read a little bit more, but it was very much just like, I'm just going to go ahead and start printing things and then figure out the electronics along the way. Cause I had a 6 month process of printing parts, especially because my original one, I was printing as Michael was designing version 2. So I was printing right along with that. But various timeframes. As I've built more, I've gotten much more efficient at it. My only limiting factor is time on printer, and especially just working with one printer. but I think my last guy I turned around in like 4 months, partially because timing of weather worked out really well. It was it's proto chopper. It's cheap from the end of Clone Wars, but on a whim, I like jokingly said, "Hey, Michael, you're going to design the dome," and like a week later, the dome pops up and it's like, "Well, guess I got to make it now." So the springtime worked out well. I was able to paint and everything, and again, I had done 4 or 5 iterations of electronics by then, but it was cool to bring them out and like bring out my prior droids in progress and just kind of show them at events and be like, "Hey, here's kind of what he looks like. He'll be finished eventually."
Yeah, I love doing maker fairs. Those are some of my favorite, to just be able to sort of talk, I guess for a 501st person, out of character, so to speak. Like normally when you're doing an appearance, you don't get to talk shop as much, and sometimes at a convention table, but maker fair is just all, you know, shop talk. So that's great. A whole weekend of shop talk.
The moment when you pull the dome off for a group of people and they're just like,
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's all around it.
yes, taking pictures and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
sometimes,
and
for me, if like when I'm out in public, whether it's a con or somewhere, and if you get certain kids or adults in really talkative and stuff, they show real interest and start asking you questions. I'll open them up, the panels in the dome, and let them see what's inside, because their eyes light up. They're like, "Oh my God, what's in?" You know, and they're very enthusiastic and enthralled into what goes on inside, like asking how does it work and kind of thing. So that's kind of rewarding.
Yeah.
And just even like with those of us that use like the PlayStation controllers or the Xbox controllers, and you get kids who are like, "Wait, you're controlling that with a video game controller?" Like, yeah. And now with 3D printers being more prevalent in schools, or like just even libraries having access to maker spaces, I can tell people, I'm like, it'll take you a while, but you could absolutely make this on your school printer. Like it is completely doable.
And I mean, the cool thing with the next generation of builders, I know on one of our Drinks and Droids sessions, we had the first robotics team that came along, and we're all very proudly showing off a few servo arms and head wobbles, and you know, kind of sagely sharing our knowledge to these guys, and then they showed us their robot. And we were like, "Oh, okay." the technology, the programming, the knowledge was absolutely outstanding. And I think that's, you know, what we've got at the moment is kind of a legacy that we're passing on to these next builders that grown up with Arduinos, that know, you know, more about coding than we guys do. And so there'll be some amazing things, I think, that will come out of that next gen. But our responsibility is to kind of get them excited about it, inspire them, let them see under the hood. You know, that's why I quite like designing the smaller ones, because, you know, it's something that kids can make in a weekend, and it just gets them hooked and gets them interested into that droid building and become part of the community.
Yeah.
we actually take things back from first as well.
Yep.
So I'm a mentor there, and it was probably the year of Celebration Chicago. So was that
2019.
19 at the beginning? They'd introduced some new brushless motors. So that was January. And then by the time Celebration came around, I had sorted a new foot drive system that actually ran off of those, because my son had wanted to do better at the droid races. So I had to take and find some way to make R2, you know, faster and have more torque than he had previously had. So and that's always fun. That's where those deadlines come in, because I was literally taking and updating CAD models and CNCing out parts like the week before Celebration, trying to find time, you know, in my schedule to upgrade R2. And Celebration, I remember the qualification rounds, he had some issues with how steering was working. So I was literally in the hotel room that night recoding steering algorithms to take and make it less sensitive towards the center of the joystick, so that he had finer control. So but
Are you going to share the results?
you can share the results. Yeah, he ended up
our droid won. So it was very exciting, and obviously all that last minute work paid off, but definitely skills to the driver.
But it's also cool because I was able to, talk with the other droid builders, and I've seen some other builders start to incorporate the Neo motors and stuff. And outside of speed, just how long R2 runs off of the brushless motors as opposed to the scooter motors has been impressive. Where I used to drive them around, and I could take 2 SLA batteries on a carpeted convention floor and drain them down in 2 hours. I can go a full 8-hour day now with tons of driving, and he's driving strong all day. So
Also, to go back to the Maker Faire thing, several years ago, Darren and I had met a young man who was, he was just thrilled to be able to meet R2 at the Maker Faire. And then fast forward to this year's Maker Faire, which unfortunately we had a
young
conflict.
man, so he was probably around 14, I would guess.
Yeah, young teenager. So this year's Maker Faire, we weren't able to make it in person, but we started seeing photos of an R2 there online. And we're like, we're the only R2 in this city. Who is this one? We need to meet him. And it turns out this young man that we had met before, he was able to get a grant to fund his build. And now he's got, it's probably 80% there so far. But it was so thrilling to see that, the young man that we met years ago now has built a droid of his own. So I can't wait to meet him.
It's largely 3D printed, so I suspect that he has thanks to owe to another builder in this room.
Yeah, it could be. So yeah, I look forward to meeting him at next year's Maker Faire. Hopefully we don't have a conflict. So David, I don't think we went through if you wanted to talk about one of your build processes.
My first droid, when I got into this, as much as most droids will say they want to do R2, I decided, well, I wanted an R2. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be that guy that stood out. So I built a R5J2, little known droid from Return of the Jedi, sits in the background. That build was interesting because I had a lot of help with it. I inherited a fellow builder's old frame, already skinned, ready to go. I had a good friend of mine who was a builder. He made lightsabers and stuff out of his garage, and he helped me with stuff like cutting out the legs, getting access to parts that they had already molded for another build he did. And then when push came to shove, he helped me actually get to the finish line, finish painting, putting it all together and getting him up on his feet. So it took probably 8-9 months to build, from when I got access to some of the parts and everything to final assembly and painting by my friend, and then taking him out. I still remember we went to a local con here in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, Steel City, for the first time. And I remember us working through a lot of bugs that we had to shake out. But the whole build process, even just from R5, I've learned a lot through iterating through the different control systems, ultimately ending up on Shadow, learning coding, learning how to wire and stuff. So the journey, that experience has helped me learn more for R2 and help my daughter build hers as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a testament to the community and camaraderie that you guys have been talking about so far. It's similar to in the 501st Legion, where someone might know how to fabricate lightsabers but doesn't know how to sew robes, or can make shins for their boots covers. And it's a similar process with the droid builders. It sounds like someone might not be skilled in electronics, but they know metalworking, so it's definitely where the online community sounds like it comes in and helps everyone.
Yep. We don't quite benefit from our armor parties in person, but we definitely benefit from virtual hangouts of like, all right, show me how to do this stuff.
Ironically, the last armor party that our garrison had, our R2 and Chopper were the only ones who showed up. So we were playing around with the droids and tinkering with Chopper's programming. And I think that was that the first time we converted him to Shadow from the RC controller, I think. So we were testing out his driving, and so yeah, that's
I
kind of fun.
think
We
I
kinda-
was adding sound that day.
Oh, okay. So we kind of overtook the 501st armor party with the droid builders party, actually.
I have definitely brought parts to sand to armor parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but learning has definitely been a huge part for me of the droid builders. I mean, yes, there's 3D printing, but I've actually learned, CAD because of it. I've learned how to, do CAM manufacturing on CNC machines, built a CNC machine so I could do different foot motor shells just because I thought they'd be stronger with subtractive manufacturing instead of additive. Circuit board design to design some shields for the Arduinos, and then programming, but that was a skill I already had. But I mean, there's so many different areas you can learn about because R2's got so many different things going on inside. And there's others that also get into hydraulics and stuff for some of the 232, depending on how they go about designing it.
Yeah, I don't know if some of our people who are watching, they're familiar with the 232, what that means when we say that, but that just always scares me anytime I watch videos of the conversions. I'm like, please don't fall over, please don't fall over.
Very
It
scary.
is the scary holy grail of R series droids.
Yeah, so there are some scenes where R2 is straight vertical and he's only on his primary 2 legs, and then there's other times where he'll tilt back and have the third center leg drop down. So that's the 3.
Yeah.
It's when you realise that R2 is probably the worst designed robot ever when it comes to physics. He's on little feet about that wide and he's stood up straight, which and as John said, if you ever watch a 2 to 3 to 2 conversion, it's scary. It's scary. It's not down to the mechanics, it's just down to the physics. This thing that you've invested 18 months or 2 years of your life in is teetering on falling forward or forwarding backwards.
And if the timing on the sequence is just off, it will go bad.
Yeah. And whilst we've seen him shot out of cannons and we've seen him fall over in deserts in real life, it doesn't quite turn out as well as it does do in the movies.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of things shooting out, Doug, might this be a good time to share one of the videos that you sent in?
Oh, yeah, sure. We one of the things that I wanted to create for my droid was a safe way to launch a lightsaber. And I say safe because there have been people who have done it in the past with 3D printed sabers or cast sabers, and if you actually get it to work and it hits you, it's not good at all. So I came up with an idea a year ago that we needed to make a saber out of foam, and so I got with a local artist and we cast a Return of the Jedi saber, and I had to reduce it by about 2 inches in length because the reality is if you were going to launch a life-size lightsaber, you'd have to have a 2-stage loading system where it would actually load from the body into the dome and then shoot out of the dome. And essentially you're creating a small lightsaber Gatling gun at that point. But we thought that's not really a great idea. So after seeing the things that Michael had created, I got inspired to learn Fusion 360, a CAD program, and created a lightsaber launcher that would actually launch a foam saber out of the dome. And so we have a video of that actually, of a lightsaber launching.
They were just looping it for the folks to see at home.
Awesome. Yeah, so that lightsaber launcher is a part of something that I created to put vertical animations inside the dome in an organized fashion, where you can actually hot swap them in and out. You can move things around the different positions. So I have another system that actually a wedding ring will rise out of the top of the dome as well if you're going to be a ring bearer. But that foam saber is one of my favorites because it's basically a 3D printed slingshot in a tube with 2 rubber bands, and the launching mechanism literally just rotates. And when it rotates, it unlocks the platform and the rubber bands shoot the saber out the top. and then it has a single actuator that controls the tilt on it. And so it clears the pipe. And it's one of my favorite toys. And the periscope was one of my favorite toys. And I also had a zapper that was a favorite toy. But as soon as that saber launcher came on the scene, that's all the kids want to see. They're like, does it launch a lightsaber? And you take it and, and it has bonked a few people on the head, which is nice because it's such a lightweight foam. Can't feel it. And then they get into they want to try to catch it and things like that. It's a lot of fun. So.
All right. I think, did you also send in a video of the periscope? Was it?
Yes. Yeah. The periscope that I have was designed by two other builders who go by IA Parts. It's Doug and Michael, another Michael, and it's a machined aluminum periscope. The sketch that I wrote for it, if you're looking at that video, is a I had to figure a way to get it to animate and control itself a little better because it kept crashing all the time. So I got with a friend of mine who's a very good coder, and he and I put the program on its own Arduino so that when I'm sending commands to the scope, it basically just takes over from there. But in this case, it's monitoring its position. So it knows, oh, I missed that switch. I got to go around again. Instead of just hitting the switch and dropping and being off by a few degrees. And as these builders can attest, when you're trying to get something to come out of a pie panel, which is the top opening, a pie panel is the top of the dome, you've got a few millimeters and that's about it. So if you're out by a degree or two, that can be kind of wonky, for lack of a better word, on the retraction or the deployment. So that's a fun one. I love the periscope animations and people do them. They're so fun on there. And then there's another video, if they loop it, where R2 is animating with no skins. I believe it's a skinless video. Either that or it's a skinless picture that I uploaded. I think it might be a video where there's no skin on my droid. He's on the table and all the panels open up and then you see all the things come out. Which is how he's actually right now with all of his things deployed. Yeah, but all of this I knew nothing about this in 2012. Zero, nada. I wasn't a coder. I didn't know any CAD. I just knew that I wanted to have this toy, and I wanted to put it in the home theater because I thought, oh, that would be cool. And then when I realized what you can do with this for other people, then it became a quest to make this an experience instead of a toy. And then watching everyone react to the experience is so fun. And that gets right back to the schools and the hospitals again. So as I'm trying to expand my droid's experience, I've had to create these, I had to invent these things that weren't there. And I'm only able to do it because I'm getting inspiration from David and John and Michael and Darren. And that's the beauty of this community. We inspire each other.
And you hit on a really good point too, of just at the start of this, you don't know a lot of this stuff. And we definitely get people who come into the community and say, I don't know electronics, or I don't know 3D printing, or just things like that, or I don't know how to work with metal. And our response is often, we didn't know how to do that either, but you succeed on the collective knowledge of everyone else. And everyone shares their information. Like if you've got questions, you can get answers for it. But yeah, it's funny, even just in my own growth of learning to, I was inspired to dive into Fusion 360. I've made my own mods for the 3D printed droids. I have designed, I've designed and 3D printed costumes for my son for Halloween now because I learned Fusion 360 and CAD from droid building. And I was able to do Arduino programming for his flapping wings and stuff. So it's fun. It has been a fun journey to learn all that stuff.
I think what amazes me is, what we've got at our fingertips now compared to, if I could grab 8-year-old me and say, come on, look at this cool stuff that you play with when you're 53. Mind blown. My mind would have been blown. To be able to have small computers that give all of this, this animation and being able to program things relatively simple that cost $10, to be able to have a CAD system where you can, it's still magic to me today. If I design something in Fusion 360, I hit print and in 2 hours I physically got this thing that I've only ever previously just thought of. it's magic, you know, and I think that's the beauty of the hobby is there's so much of stuff that really unlocks the excitement of 8-year-old me when I was a kid, you know, imagining what could happen, and suddenly we've got all of these tools and all of these things to play with, and the only limitation really is your imagination. And that, you know, when people say how do you get started in droids, my answer is always play. You know, grab an Arduino, play with it. Grab a 3D printer, grab Fusion 360. You know, you're not waiting on 6 months to get a part and then making sure that you're not going to break it. If you mess it up, just print another one. You know, you kind of, to me, it's all about trying to unlock that 8-year-old kid and just playing with this stuff until you learn it. Because I think that's how most people kind of learn, and that's where the enthusiasm of the community comes through and inspires other people to do similar.
Yep. And even if you wind up not building with a 3D printed droid, like if you want to go metal, if you want to go all out, there's still benefits of, all right, cool. Well, I can 3D print some of the detail parts. That'll save me time on that. Or I can, me playing around with Arduinos has taught me a different way to do lighting for the inside of my aluminum droid or so forth. Or, hey, I've got this open source control system. I know a little bit about programming now. I'm going to add in some extra animations that I figured out. So it's all, none of it is wasted effort. It's all just little bits and pieces of tidbits of knowledge that you can grow upon.
So I don't know if we really touched on it. We kind of talked about some trooping moments. I don't know if there were any other trooping moments that kind of really stood out as one of your favorite times that you brought out your droid with an interaction.
Not really trooping moments, but I remember starting off, because the way I started in 3D design is I got a 3D printer. I wanted to design something. I chose to design R2D2 dome because it was half a ball cut in half, and how hard can that be? So I designed this thing, stuck it on Thingiverse, and then I was hit like a brick for the R2D2 Builders Club. You know, loads of people went, "Wow, it's a dome, and it's one of the hardest things to fabricate because the rest of the stuff we can make, it's brilliant." Immediately followed by telling me about all of the inaccuracies in what I've done and the minor changes. But I just kind of unlocked this community, and it was on Facebook, and there's, you know, R2D2 Builders Club, and then I got a couple of friends requests, and two of the people that I got was Oliver Steeples and Lee Towersy. And again, I just had a look at these, and I got a real kind of fanboy moment. It's like, oh my God, these people on Facebook want to be my friends, and they are the people who built R2D2 for, you know, the new kind of the new trilogy of films with Oliver and Lee. And I think that's the other thing with the community. You mentioned celebrities, is within the group there's a bunch of people that, you know, I'm still in awe of. I'm in awe of Lee and Oliver. I'm in awe of Michael Masters and Mike Senna and all of these, you know, and most of the guys on here as well. You know, there's kind of little legends that sat within all of that are celebrities in their own right, really, and they're all so lovely, you know, and that's another part of the community, really, which is meeting all of those guys.
Yeah, I think that's the crazy thing is like interacting on a normal, like not celebrity fan interaction, but just like a normal person interaction with like the people who have literally built the droids that we have seen on screen, like on TV shows and in movies. Like the Lego Masters, watching when R2 rolled on, and I turned to my wife and was like, I know who built that, because of like the specific foot design. I was like, I know who his R2 that is. It's just, and the fact within the confines of confidentiality and all that stuff, and like people being able to give back to the community, but like getting sign off from Lee Towersy, who designed the C2B5, who mostly got cut from Rogue One, but like getting most of his sign off, I was like, yeah, no, that's pretty close to accurate. Like, awesome.
Yeah, we should probably backtrack and mention that Lee Towersy and Oliver Steeples, they had sort of on a joking whim type thing, had, you know, approached Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm at one of the celebrations, and they were just like, well, you know, we could build the droids for the movies, you know, in that sarcastic kind of joking term, and there they are, UK droid builders now working for Lucasfilm in the Star Wars movies. So one of those like droid themed Cinderella stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is great.
So kind of speaking of celebrity encounters, has anyone else had sort of a celebrity encounter when they brought out their droid at all? I know when Darren and I took our R2 to Fan Expo, which is a big convention up in Toronto, and we met, blanking on the actor's name, Ezra, Taylor Gray. He was fascinated by R2 and just, he was like, push us aside. He came around at his autograph table, to look at R2. And, we hand him the remote and he's like, here, you wanna play with R2's dome? Because we have, one for the dome and one for the body. We didn't want to give him the body just in case, you'd never controlled an R2 before. But he was just like flabbergasted that, he was able to make R2 do that just by this little remote in his hand. So that was one of my favorite celebrity encounters with R2.
I have one I'm looking forward to. Ashley, I'm going to butcher her last name, Extine. Ahsoka's voice actress is coming to a local con, and I printed cheap from the end of Clone Wars. He's in all of like 2 or 3 episodes, but I'm going to have her sign. I've got friends who have their R2's been on stage with Weird Al, which is just an incredible moment. A friend right before COVID, he took his R2 and met, oh man, why am I suddenly blanking on his name? LeVar Burton, and just like the incredible interaction with that. And Jason Mewes, like we had Jason Mewes at one of our local cons, and Mewes just like completely fanboyed out over our local R2. So it's just stuff like that of again, like people who are celebrities, and then they're like, oh man, that's incredible. Like the joy on their faces is really cool.
Yeah, the closest I got to a celebrity interaction with my droid was Celebration Orlando. I guess it was 2016. R5 got to be involved in one of the droid panels at Celebration. I got tagged the night before, like, sure, I'll be, yeah, come in that morning. And literally, we were on stage for all of like 2 minutes at the end of the panel, but just to be, in the same room, on the same stage, on that kind of a stage, and then have, Warwick Davis was there, Alan Tudyk was there, Anthony Daniels was also on stage at one point. So just to be, have my droid in the same vicinity as those big name actors was kind of cool.
So we're starting to wrap up here for our panel time. For those who are watching, you might also be interested in our 4 o'clock panel. So in about, I think it's 3 hours from now, if you're not in the Eastern time zone, it's going to be all about 3D printers. So, this is sort of a similar topic. If you guys are watching this one, you might also be interested in 3D printers. So you might want to come back and check that out. As we said at the beginning of our panel, all the programming today for InfernoCon is to benefit the 501st Legion Make-A-Wish Endowment Fund. So make sure to make a donation if you've enjoyed the programming. I think we might have like 2 more minutes. I don't know if anyone else had any fun stories to share about their builds or encounters.
I will do the time-honored tradition of, if you are interested in building a droid, go check out astromech.net and do plenty of reading. That's always the answer. Tons of Facebook groups, all that good stuff. Astromech.net is a huge repository of knowledge, and that'll also lead you to the other droid groups as well. But yeah.
Yep, and the forums are open for anyone to join. So yeah, just click on the forums at the top and sign up.
Decades of knowledge at this point.
You're going to say something, Michael?
No, I was just adding and play. So I think
Yes.
for me, the important thing about building is, where don't get frustrated that it takes 18 months to build whatever you're aiming to build. Just play with it, play with the technology, play with the parts, learn as you go through it. It's all a bit of a learning experience, and it should, it's a hobby. It should be fun. It won't go right the first time, but what you're doing is constantly learning, and eventually you'll end up with a room full of things and run out of space for the amount of things that you've created. as we all do. So you know, it's important that you approach it in a fun and a playful manner.
And also too, to that point, you know, reading is great and researching is great, but also don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yes.
If you run into a problem you can't solve, you can't find the answer. A friend of mine's building his own version of Chopper. He's constantly, you know, he's doing whatever research he can, but when he gets in a roadblock and can't find it, he hits me. He's hitting me up for answers, you know. And all of us builders are more than happy to answer a question. I'm sure your problem is not the first. You're not the first one to encounter your problem.
At the end of the day,
that's
we would all love to have more droids out. That's the thing too. Like more droids, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Moon Celebration's my favorite one because we get to have our droid out with all of his friends.
And start with a smaller project is sometimes useful, right? So don't have your initial goal being your endpoint of a fully functional R2. Decide, you know, focus on that dome, right? If you just have a fully functional dome that has panels that open up, it's still a really cool prop that you can display in and of itself. Or maybe start with a smaller droid, whether it's, you know, something like Dio or something simpler like a mouse droid. If you're learning in the process, that's still going to help you get to that end point on the end of the day. So,
Yeah,
And Michael has designed some really wonderful little mini droids. You know, all different. Took R2 and everybody and shrunk them down to probably what 6-8 inches tall. Michael.
Yeah, about 8 inches.
Fully, you know, they're fully RCable, which is some servos and stuff.
Oh, there we go.
so cute.
John's
There
got
you go.
one.
Yeah, those are a good starting point too. It's easy, small, not as long of a commitment as a full size R2 would be.
Can't see it,
And-
but it's a battery pack and a receiver in there, plus some servos.
And the technology is virtually the same as the big R2s. It's just that the motors are smaller, the RC receivers are a little bit smaller, and the controllers are smaller. But once you've got your head how a small one works, it then gives you confidence to jump up to start to play with some of the bigger ones.
Well, thanks everyone for coming on and talking droid building. We loved hearing all the different stories and having you on. I don't know if any of you guys are already scheduled for the 3D printer panel, but I'm sure they'd be welcome to more panelists if you're wanting to hop on to the later panel. Once again, for those who are watching at home, make sure to go to inferno-con.com/programming.html, and you can see our whole schedule of all the other programming that we have going on today. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, here's our short circuit dome animation system in our warp cell that is a smoker cell now, complete with an LED array. Here we go. Now, at this point, the fans have kicked on and are evacuating the smoke from the dome. And then it will reset, shut everything down, and pull the periscope in last.